Hello and welcome to Masters of the Forge episode 45. And as we kinda suggested last week, and today's episode is about Slaanesh, because after all, 'tis the season of love. And when it's the season of love, all the jewelers and the florists would like you to spend at least every penny you have, hopefully more, because, excess is good.
Yes, excess is good. Oh, Slaanesh is working very hard this Valentine's Day season, isn't he? It.
Yeah.
Oh man, dude, there's so much exciting stuff happening with 40K though. It's like I need to restrain myself not to do a Overlord style in the news segment.
Yeah.
Oh. Everything is so exciting, from the Battlefleet Gothic RTS, which I hate RTSs, but I want to play it so bad.
Oh yes.
Oh my god.
And
apparently from what Andy Chambers said, it plays very much like the board game did, or the miniatures game did.
if it didn't, I would be really disappointed. But I'm also super excited about the board game I'm also really excited that the board game might get a revival too, since Games Workshop opened that specialist games studio, which is
and
great.
They're legit about it too, dude. The freaking battle, or what is it called? What's the name of the game? The football game?
Oh, Blood Bowl.
Blood Bowl is legit back. Like, they showed some pictures this week that it is legit coming, and that's going to be awesome. I still have an old one still in the shrink wrap in my back room, which I haven't touched since like 2 Adepticons ago.
That makes that also means that maybe I should be careful about getting rid of my Isle of Blood stuff, because that's square base and Blood Bowl might still be square base.
Ooh, yeah. I mean, it usually doesn't matter, right? Because it's just squares. You can put any model there, really.
Yeah, because I sold off all my Skaven stuff except for 2 boxes of Isle of Blood. And if there's anything I want to play in Blood Bowl, it's a Skaven team.
Nice. Yeah, that would be freaking awesome, dude.
Speaking of Blood Bowl, I actually hooked up with one of the guys that I was playing Blood Bowl with online, in the PC game, who's from Canada. So that was Z Insane and Hexeter. It was so fun. I haven't talked to these people for, 2, almost 3 years. And suddenly he was like, "Hey, man." I was like, "What? Oh, that's you. Huh. It's been ages." So we just hooked up and played some other games, but it's been fun. And hopefully I'll be able to pick up Blood Bowl too, and we'll be able to play that, because back in the Deep Strike Radio days, we actually had a online Blood Bowl tournament going, just because, funsies.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, have you noticed, it's been so great, there have been so many chaos rumors lately, there's always chaos rumors, right, because people are just guessing, but the best part is they're just releasing chaos for Age of Sigmar. It's almost like they're just trolling people at this point.
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't mean to rub salt in the wound, Snorri.
I'm still sitting here hoping that the Chaos Space Marine book will be out really soon.
No, we have some more Folka Fenrica to release before.
Yeah, the Space Wolf actually needed new stuff. It wasn't so bad.
Oh, so great. It's almost on purpose, I think. I don't know, but it's pretty great. Yeah. Those guys look awesome, though. The Wolf. Hey, if you asked either of us a year ago, hey, is GW going to release Wolfen? I'm sure both of us would have been like, yeah, sure thing, bro. Sure thing, bro. That's what's going to happen. Freaking, yeah, no, not a chance. But okay. Sure. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what have you been up to, Snorri?
You know what? Not a lot, but Last weekend, my boss's stepson wanted to invite me over because he's into painting miniatures. He doesn't play 40K, but he buys this kit and he clips it out and doesn't file off the mold lines, and there's bits of sprue still stuck on them because he doesn't clip them nice and all that. And he slaps some paint on, but he enjoys it. So I go over there, I put some more paint on my Renegade Ogren, so they're starting to look like something, even though they are a long way from done. But, being at my boss's place, he likes whiskey, I don't mind whiskey, so I brought over this bottle of, I'm an unnamed Tennessee whiskey. I can't advertise that stuff on air. This is a bottle I bought when I was at Adepticon last year, so it's almost a year since I got this, and I still hadn't cracked it open, so, it was about time. And it's a very good one. So, we had fun talking smack and, just enjoying the evening.
That's awesome, dude. Nice one. I've been working on the Thunderhawk transporter. I made it my 1 hour a night challenge for January. So that's come along. I'm up to, I did most of the base coats and a bunch of weathering, and I just put on the wash and some decals. So basically it's got the the right rear quarter is Ultramarines. The left rear quarter is Blood Ravens because they stole it from the Ultramarines. And the front is got the startings of the Orc red paint job. So I was worried it was going to look bad, but it actually looks pretty. It actually looks pretty hot. My wife says that it should be called the Spork. So space orc spaceship. So it's orc spaceship. So she wants me to call it the Spork. So
well, it's not the worst suggestion I've heard.
A lot of folks seem to agree with her. So I have been racking my brain as to what the heck to do for a flight stand for this thing. The Thunderhawk gunship, at least you can just drill a hole in it and couch it in some kind of thing at the top on the roof. Or not even in the roof. Like you could actually create some kind of couch inside for it. But the transporter, the belly is all open. You're meant to put land raiders and rhinos there. So I was like, how am I supposed to do this? My first thought was I used to work at a metal fab place, and I wasn't any good. I just sat there grinding all day, getting freaking iron filings in my lungs. But this, what they could do is I could have two pieces of 1/4-inch bar bent and welded onto a metal plate for a base. So the bars would stick out of the rear of the Thunderhawk and they would curve down, and the base would actually be at the center of gravity. If you can imagine what I'm talking about.
I'm pretty sure I can I think I can visualize the whole. I guess it looks like a fancy desk lamp.
Yeah, it would look like a fancy desk lamp, and there are a lot of Star Trek ships that have display bases like that, so that you don't have something sticking out of the bottom of it. It looks like it's actually flying through space.
Yeah.
But that would be kind of expensive, I think. It would be several bends and several welds, and I think I would end up paying a lot of money for it.
And also, I think that it would take up a lot of space in the back of it. It was like behind, so it might be impractical.
Yeah. Especially for game purposes, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm thinking of doing is plexiglass. I think I might actually, instead of, because I can't put a rod through it. It just is impossible. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to get some a plexiglass sheet, cut it in the kind of the shape of the outline of the transport, and then cut two pieces of plexiglass to make like a plus sign sort of like the GW flying stand is right now. Yeah. And glue that to another piece of plexiglass as the base. So it'll just be kind of just cradling it there instead of it being stuck in through a hole. It'll just be cradled by all this plexiglass. And I think that should be pretty sturdy, and that should work fine. As long as when I move it, I hold on to the ship as well as the base. I don't want to be just like moving it by the base because it'll just slide off. So that's kind of what I got going on there.
So just one question. Sorry for the interruption here, but
no, please interrupt.
Will you be making some looted vindicators or something to put in there?
Excellent. I'm glad you asked that question, because I also my buddy Skip long time ago gave me a really terribly decimated Land Raider, and I had cut it up and gotten it prepped for a battle wagon. So last night I just went crazy and started gluing pieces onto it, and now I have an actual Land Raider. I have a looted Land Raider that I can attach to the bottom of the transporter. I'm also going to use some of the decals that Jason, our sound doctor, he gave me some of the Blood Ravens decals for that too. So I'll say that the orcs stole both the Land Raider and the Thunderhawk from the Blood Ravens at some point.
Well, that's
we
brilliant.
Play all the time, so
and also it's brilliant actually, because Blood Raven's paint scheme would be quite a lot of red, so it's already going faster.
It is, yeah. That's why we steal from them. All their stuff goes really fast.
Yeah.
So at the same time I built more cultists, I picked up some of the, those 5-man boxes of troops that they put out.
Yeah.
That are just the push fit. So I got some of those skeletons. They are so bad. I spent a long time last night cutting and trimming some of these things. The arms are as wide as a Space Marine arm. I'm like, oh, this is terrible. And I had to put pistols in their hands. 2 of them I gave flamers. It was brutal, but I did finally get them. So that fills up all my troop spaces in my foam, so I can't buy any more troops.
Well, at least you have a nice and rounded force now, don't you?
Yes. Oh, yeah, I have a nice rounded force. I just have to paint. I have to paint 16 pigs, 10 cultists, and the skull cannon of Khorne, and I'm finished. So I'm looking forward to that. I'll probably do that next month. So I'm going to do some business. The Hobby Progress Challenge, Independent Characters Hobby Progress Challenge, is going to be starting in a couple weeks. I have the commitment posts up on the IC's message board, independentcharacters.com, and just click on message boards and you can sign up there. Basically, this year is going to be the same as last year, with a few minor exceptions. You can paint any units you want. You're not forced to use any kind of list layout or any kind of faction requirement. But you can only do one independent character for the whole. You can't just do 10 models and expect to get full credit. So or 10 small models and get full credit. So it's going to be 9 significant units and an HQ if you so choose. Also, you get bonus points. We have achievements, so you get bonus points for completing 5 from the same faction. Bonus points for completing 5 more. Bonus points for doing themed objective markers, and you get points for writing 1,000-word story about your army. So yeah, we're giving away point, and then the more points you get, the higher the kind of badge you get for. So it's gold, silver, and bronze awards for all that. I'm not sure if we're going to have prize support this year, but there certainly was a lot of prize support last year, thanks to Spruehammer.
I really like that you're actually expanding this. So it's not just the Hobby Progress Challenge of painting stuff. It's actually It's more of a expansion of the whole Hobby Progress Challenge to,
the whole hobby.
And maybe even give some people an excuse to really think about their force, not just paint it.
Exactly.
I love it.
Last year was thanks. Last year was pretty good. This year I hope it'll be even better, especially with the return of the ICs. We're all looking forward to that. So everybody just sign up. Oh, we're also doing a we're partnering with 1 hour a night. So there are special achievements for people who also participate in 1 hour a night. So we're trying to kind of work together and get some cross-mogination going.
That's almost tempting to enter my renegades into this.
Right? Yeah. I mean, you can paint a unit a month, Snorre. You can do it.
Possible?
You could do it. Not possible. You can definitely do it. You spend 1 hour a night, say, honey, between like 9 and 10 or 10 and 11, you're going to be passed out. I'm just going to take an hour and I'm going to paint. I'm going to put a little bit of paint on this. Doesn't have to be a lot of paint. I'm just going to do a little bit of progress. If you did that every day for a month, that's 30 hours. You don't need 30 hours. All you need is like 10 or 12.
Yeah. How's about the vehicles? Is there a restriction how many vehicles you can have?
No, you could just do 10 vehicles if you really wanted to.
Okay, because in my case it would be a couple of chimeras, some Lehman Russ tanks, and some other assortments of stuff.
Oh yeah, dude! This year I am so cheating because I am gonna try to do the single unified Green Tide unit. It's like I'm gonna actually legit try to paint 100 boys and a war boss all in the same scheme, so they could be just one unified Green Tide. Yeah. So I am not doing that in 1 month. I'm probably gonna split that into 2 or 3 months worth of painting. So yeah, feel free to cheat. If you have a 20-man unit but could count as a 10-man, do 2 10-man instead of 120 if you really want to. That's totally fair. It's not fair that Space Marines just to get to paint 10 guys with base coat, highlight, detail done. That's not fair. Yeah, if you have a Xenos army with 30 guys in a unit, feel free to do min-sized squads, seriously.
Yeah.
But shoot for the moon, right?
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, as Snorre said, this episode is about Slaanesh. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Stick around, and we'll be right back with the In the Lore segment.
Do you play more than one mini war game? Or do you like listening to shows which discuss other games and pan hobby topics? Combat Phase is a weekly podcast covering the whole hobby for gamers. We also interview a lot of Black Library authors. Join Kenny and Robert as they try to grow the hobby. Combat Phase, the best part of the game, is on iTunes and www.combatphase.com.
Hey, Masters of the Forge listeners, are you looking to expand your Warhammer 40,000 gaming group?
Do you want to start a 40k club in your area?
Do you want the people you attract to be like-minded mofos?
Do you want to advertise your YouTube channel?
Or even attract more subscribers to your hobby blog or online community?
Then what better way than to advertise on the Masters of the Forge podcast?
All we ask of you is that you email us at mastersoftheforge@gmail.com or message us on Facebook with a full text of your advertisement, including the region in which you live and any contact information people can use to get a hold of you.
We will have one of our many tech servitors read your advertisement on the air. We promise not to make fun of you.
Though we can't always predict the actions of our servitors, you really can't find good help these days.
No, you can't. In the beginning of time, there was the Eldar, immortal, very psychically capable, and very full of themselves. After sort of having defeated the Necron Tier in the War in Heaven, there wasn't much gardening to do in the universe, so they decided to take time off and focus on their hobbies.
But because of their immortality, they were cursed with the problem of enjoying their free time over a long period. And we're talking about thousands of years here. Over the millennia, underground cults sprang up where like-minded Eldar would enjoy taboo pastimes, like creating ever more opulent works of art, amassing ridiculous amounts of wealth, drug use, and sex. And if you look at the book Path of the Outcast, there's a scene in the book where the main character travels into the Eye of Terror, to a Khorne world that is basically a planet-sized palace filled with unimaginable wealth, like beautiful paintings, sculptures, and all kinds of things. Just the entire place is just one big art gallery.
I feel like if I were to read that Path series, I would have a much deeper understanding of the 40K universe in general.
At least the Eldar way of doing things, and also the Eldar view on quite a few things.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
It definitely should be on my list. I hear it's really good.
It is.
As time passed, these cults delved deeper and deeper into depravity. They started practicing torture and murder, and the cults became more and more a part of everyday life. This is when the first among the Eldar foresaw how their decadence would end and emigrated. These were called the Exodites. Years later, several craft-world Eldar realized how bad things had gotten and what a disaster they were facing, so they fled too, and pretty much just in the nick of time.
Yeah, because being able to feel emotions about 1,000 times stronger than normal humans, the magnitude of the raw psychic emotion generated by the Eldar depravities finally gave birth to the youngest Chaos God, Slaanesh. The psychic force of this birth, if you can call it that, was so powerful that it created the largest permanent warp storm in the galaxy, known as the Eye of Terror. And also, it killed off most of the fleeing Eldar and all but 3 of their gods. Cain was shattered. Segarath, the Laughing God, he was last seen escaping into the webway. And
Smart.
Yeah. And Isha, the goddess of life, she was supposedly kidnapped by Nurgle, so...
she's trapped in his garden.
Hopefully, supposedly. Yeah. Now, many of the Exodites having left earlier, and some of the Eldar cults we refer to as the Dark Eldar, having fled into the webway, escaped the calamity, but the Eldar as a race was brought to the brink of extinction in mere moments.
Right. And I think there are a couple interesting things here. First of all, the more I read about the Dark Eldar, the more I feel like it's they're I kind of wish that they were more considered a part of the Eldar race in general than like an offshoot, because there's really almost literally nothing separating them from their cousins, to be perfectly honest. They are the same race, and we've discussed that at great length in the past, obviously.
Yeah, and in game terms, the only real connection between the two seem to be the Harlequins.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're right. And another thing is, it's really interesting throughout all the lore. Again, I know that we've had this conversation, but the fact that even though Slaanesh was birthed in the early 30th millennium, was it, or the late? Yeah, the early 30th millennium, which is like M29. It does seem to indicate that that's kind of a meaningless thing in the warp itself, where time is meaningless. But I don't know. The texts do kind of indicate that Slaanesh is a new god, and even in the warp, she is still kind of. I would have to say like building her power from a warrior standpoint, from a brute force standpoint.
Yeah.
You know what? I think this is a good time to mention that I personally feel like it's a good idea to just like switch pronouns randomly throughout this, and that'll probably happen when referring to Slaanesh.
Yeah.
So Slaanesh, being a ravenous god, delighted in feeding on all the souls of the Eldar it had just killed. Slaanesh, being a ravenous god, delighted in feeding on all the souls of the Eldar it had just killed, and is ever searching for more souls to devour. The Eldar counter this by always wearing soul stones, and the Dark Eldar, believing that Slaanesh is continuously leeching their souls, keep practicing their depraved hobbies openly in the belief that it replenishes their souls. Which is might be true. I mean, it seems to work.
Yeah, there's references in the Dark Eldar codexes that if Dark Eldar aren't part of these gladiatorial battles, or as in watching them, or if they don't participate in some kind of depraved thing, then they wither away and become sort of a husk, and other Dark Eldars are like, get away from me, you almost dead thing. So
right. The price you pay for being not a jerk.
Yeah, and so it really seems like they actually lose their souls slowly if they don't do this. So they are doomed from the beginning. They will always be losing a part of their soul, so they have no choice anymore. Like Slaanesh also has a palace in the warp. You gotta have a castle, and it's always about luring people in. And in Slaanesh's palace, there's layers of circles of ever-increasing temptation that can trap anyone who's foolish enough to enter. And the first circle tempts your greed, and the next circle is about gluttony, tempting you with the most exquisite food, wine. And then there's carnality, which is the temptations of flesh. You will see whatever you find attractive will be
it's
there.
It's basically the internet. Like, that circle is the
internet. That is nice. Then there's a circle for adulation. That is, everyone adores you and treats you like a god. So it really is about absolute power over others. And then the next one is vainglory, where you appear perfect in every way, and I guess there's a lot of mirrors over there, so that it really tries to capture you, just admiring yourself. And finally, there's a layer where there's just perfect bliss, and everything just feels wonderfully relaxing.
That's awesome, and I think it's really cool how, unlike other Chaos Gods, there's no real, Slaanesh does not bother with defenses that repel her enemies, right?
No.
He's set it up so that you are tempted to be drawn in, and you get lost in yourself and your pleasures. So the journey through these circles can take hundreds of years. A single moment of weakness will trap you forever. However, if you manage to get past all the temptations, you will be allowed to stand before the Prince of Pleasure himself. The creature's form could be anything it desires, male, female, or otherwise. For Slaanesh, such matters of physical form only have meaning insofar as its needs are concerned. Standing before she who thirsts, you would only see what form he would need to entrap you and consume you, making you his slave for eternity. Now, one could, when I'm looking through some of these texts and stuff, it does have a slightly more male bent for Slaanesh and a slightly more female bent for his followers, which it's kind of that's kind of slacked a little bit recently, and I think it should slack a bit because otherwise it seems very misogynistic, like to have this single male form being waited upon by these hordes of females.
Yeah. But also in the old descriptions of Slaanesh, half the body is male and half the body is female. So it's not really a gender, it's just something that will trap you.
Exactly, whatever it takes to trap you. Exactly, and that's kind of what the models represent too, in a lot of ways. Like a lot of the demonettes and the Keeper of Secrets and all those models have no clear gender. So and that speaks to the malleability of the pleasures capable by these demons.
And Slaanesh is the god of excess, obsession, narcissism, megalomania, greed, lust, and all-consuming depravity, simply for the sake of depravity. Her name literally means the Prince of Pleasure. That is the Eldar name for her. But she does not act with ambivalence. His needs are as selfish as they are lavish. Slaanesh not only feasts upon pleasure for her own delight, but uses the needs of others to further his own twisted power struggle throughout the galaxy.
Right. It's like all the other Chaos Gods, the reach of Slaanesh is broad. Her influence can be felt from the first breath a newborn takes to the final death screams of 1 trillion souls as they are burned to ash in a cataclysmic exterminatus. Slaanesh is insidious. The most banal emotion can bring a smile to his face because it is a gateway to greater feelings and even greater deeds. Imperial citizens who toil in constant state of subjugation, toil and punishment, can easily be distracted by simple pleasures.
And when a mortal's life is a grey malaise, something as simple as taking a long drag on a mild narcotic after an exhausting day of physical labor can be a symptom of an entire network of substance abuse, distribution, cultivation, and development. It may not stop there, though. Within a handful of years, imagine an entire hive city or even an entire world in the grasp of addiction and the Dark Prince himself. One need only bring to mind the simplest and most innocuous of emotions to imagine how they can be twisted and perverted on a grand scale, given enough time, resources, and demand. And the demand is never hard to come by.
No. It's like this slippery slope of experience and emotion, right? Of course, the Imperium tries to curb these sensations at their source. There are entire worlds where simple pleasures of life are bred out of humanity. In such a rigid society, success is understandably spotty at best. The more you suppress the natural human desire for simple pleasures, the stronger their reaction will be when they find these pleasures.
Yeah.
One might argue that the more oppressively such a rigid structure is persecuted, the more fanatical people will be about not only seeking out their desires, but disseminating them to others. Like, the more rigid the society, the more likely it is you're going to have these dissidents who feel like they can bring justice for the people who are oppressed. We kind of don't see this where what's it called? The Krieg. The Krieg don't have this problem, do they?
Or do not they? Really.
No. That's like a success story as far as the Imperium's concerned.
Yeah. Slaanesh doesn't only feast upon the desires of mortals, but her reach also extends to the works of all the Chaos Gods. Surely all the gods, in some way or another, have some connection with each other, but Slaanesh invades their very desires. With every victory a servant of another Chaos God enjoys, and every defeat they suffer, their exaltations serve Slaanesh every bit as much as they do the other patron deity, which is a very interesting concept, really. Although the agents of Slaanesh are often at odds with the forces of Khorne, and Slaanesh would be hopelessly outmatched in terms of numbers and brute force, she has a way of twisting the minds of Khornate leaders and turning conflicts into her favor. This could be seen as a strategy more to Tzeentch's tune, but it would be a mistake to assume any single Chaos God corners the market on deceit and treachery. And this really is something I love, that Slaanesh sort of occupies multiple gods, because, or it's like that Slaanesh occupies the realms of different gods, because, like we were mentioning here, if you're sort of like a military leader, you might be weak to Khorne because, conquest, physical might, and all that. But at the same time, if you take a little pleasure in your victories, then suddenly Slaanesh has a toe in the door.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Yeah, I agree 100%, and it doesn't stop there, does it? Like,
no.
And we're, like you just said, it's the Slaanesh has a way of just meddling in the affairs of the other gods and of mortals. Maybe not using the same methods as Tzeentch, not using like this keen foresight, but just manipulating the emotions and the desires of her thralls, and it's still that still I think would please Tzeentch. That would the chaos that espouses would please Tzeentch. Any Slaaneshi gambit that pushes a warrior to bring violence upon his enemies in a successful conquest, that would please Khorne. Why wouldn't it please Khorne? So as much as these chaos gods are at odds with each other, they are certainly working together in maybe not in a structured way, but in an abstract way for sure.
Yeah, the conquest of one god actually benefits other gods, even though they don't mean to or try to. It's just the way it is. Mm-hmm. So they are all dependent on each other.
I wonder if they try to kind of limit that, or if they just embrace it. Like, can you imagining like things like the diseases that come with war? Just like just war itself is so entrenched with disease and suffering that like Khorne couldn't hope to reduce the impact of that and spread those glories to Nurgle and Slaanesh. I don't think he could. He just could. It's impossible to not benefit the others.
Yeah,
and it's just interesting to discuss that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean that's all the info we're gonna kind of generally bring about Slaanesh. Do you want to take a quick break and come back and talk about kind of more specifically kind of what the Chaos Demons and the Chaos Space Marines codexes bring to the table as far as like the histories of some of the units and how these forces manifest themselves in the campaign world?
Yeah.
All right, we'll be right back.
At the It Will Not Die podcast, we focus on narrative gaming that brings your tabletop to life.
Join us every 2 weeks for campaigns, reviews, and interviews from around the world and across the hobby.
And remember, it doesn't matter how you love the hobby.
Just do it.
Nailed it.
Okay, so now we're going to kind of talk about more tangible things, not just concepts of Slaanesh. Let's start off with demons.
The children of Slaanesh.
That's right. Even though she's relatively young, his influence is growing throughout both the Materium and the Immaterium. Countless spirits of excess have been born from her depraved will, and they fight for dominance throughout the warp just like any other agent of chaos. When they make their appearance in the Materium, demons of Slaanesh often appear with twisted implements of pleasure and pain, able to deliver all manner of exquisite death to their foes. Now, here's an interesting thing, Snorri. The way that war in the Immaterium is waged seems like it might or might not be something that the human mind can comprehend. The Immaterium is formless, right? Like, or generally formless. But when we talk about like Slaanesh's palace, it definitely has a very physical manifestation. Is that just for our benefit? Or because I'm like I would like as a human I would imagine actually vast fields of battle where the demons fight, but in reality I would guess that it's not really quite the same.
I think that we'll have to go back to one of the definitions of the warp being shaped by human emotions.
Right.
So I think that if we were to go into the warp and try to look at a battlefield there, we would see something that would be something that would make sense to the human mind, even though that might not be how it's actually being fought in the warp. Mm-hmm. Because the warp changes into something that can be relatable to whoever is observing it. I guess it's sort of a
sense, dude.
Schrodinger's cat kind of thing.
Yeah, but no, what you say makes a lot of sense. If the warp is this place that is being constantly and might have even been, if you argue, it might have even been birthed from, human consciousness, then its natural state, although malleable, should be at least understandable from that perspective. All right, cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
And there's also something that I just thought about, and that is, for those of us who have experience with good old-fashioned Dungeons and Dragons, I think if you start to look at the whole planner part of Dungeons and Dragons, the whole planes of this and planes of that,
Right,
I
like
think
the
you're starting to get
astral plane
yeah, exactly. Then I think you're gonna have a pretty good idea of how this at least can be represented in a human mind.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right. Great.
So let's start off with the Demonettes, which are Slaanesh's lesser servants, but are not to be dismissed as simple foot soldiers. Their form is androgynous and malleable, much like that of their master. They plot and scheme against one another, both within and without the warp, in order to garner favor with the Dark Prince. On the battlefield, they bask in the pain and fear they inflict upon their victims. Where other greater demons are designed for pure bloodshed, the Demonettes are made for subtler tasks. When a Demonette has earned enough favor, she is allowed to mount the Dark Prince's dais and personally tend to him. These are the heralds of Slaanesh, and these creatures are trusted with the details of Slaanesh's plans and lead their efforts in the Materium.
Yes, imagine this giant harem of androgynous demons all working together and against each other to garner favor with their Dark Prince, and when they're allowed, when they've garnered enough favor to kind of attain this level of personal care for their Dark Master, that's when they become the heralds. And it's crazy. It's like it imagines someone going to a spa and like being tended to by a multitude of attendants, and that's basically what this is.
And I'm just seeing Slaanesh being very Slaanesh-y here, because that internal fighting between these Demonettes is going to bring so much pleasure and so much suffering from winning favor or losing favor, and the whole scheming and everything, plans working out, which is, of course, something that Siege also likes. Ta-da.
Oh, yeah.
That it's going to be so much pleasure and so much suffering and everything as these Demonettes plot against each other that, I'm pretty sure Slaanesh doesn't even care. He just sees, oh, you're pretty successful, so, reward. And he gets reward himself.
Yeah, and he gets all the benefits, and just by rewarding someone with that position of a herald, probably infuriates 10 other Demonettes at a lower level. At least, for every one that attains that position, you have a bunch of really pissed off, very sad Demonettes who don't attain that position, and it just encourages them to work harder at it.
Yeah, and every time someone feels joy for being uplifted or feels pain or suffering from being defeated, I'm pretty sure Slaanesh is sitting there twisting his nipples.
Yep. There are other Slaanesh warriors, though, that are more directly used in battle. Steeds of Slaanesh are these malformed creatures which are used as mounts by the Demonettes in units called Seekers. They're the ultimate trackers, and they can even smell their quarry's desires on the wind. Like they can smell your fear and your hatred and your desire, and track you. And they have these like creepy tongues that can lap up pain. It is gross.
These are some really cool models, and I find them really weird and creepy.
Yeah, they're really cool. They are even used to pull these delicate and pretty cruel battle engines called Secret Chariots and Hellflayers. The Secret Chariot just pulls this rack of flensing blades that immediately liquefy the bodies of their enemies that are trampled underfoot, but through the dark gifts of Slaanesh, they take far longer to rip apart the screaming souls, which is awesome. The Hellflayer, this has an interesting story. The Hellflayer was originally a more mundane device. Basically, it was used to rip apart souls in order to fertilize Slaanesh's Garden of Delights. And so its operation was basically a punishment for demonettes who had displeased the Dark Lord. But one day, a pair of demonettes stole their Hellflayer and took it into battle, ripping apart swaths of Imperial Guardsmen and nearly paralyzing themselves with the ecstasy of such horrible carnage. Of course, the demonettes were brutally punished with transmogrification into unfeeling marble, but the Hellflayer would no longer be looked upon as a simple gardening implement.
That is crazy.
Isn't that awesome?
The Keepers of Secrets, though, are the physical manifestation of the term silver-tongued devils. These greater demons are super intelligent and hopelessly persuasive creatures. A Keeper of Secrets is a close confidant of Slaanesh, working tirelessly to further her goals and dismantle the machinations of her enemies. While the Keepers of Secrets revels in their work in the material realm against humanity and also against the agents of Khorne, their greatest desires are made true when they are unleashed against the Eldar. There is nothing they desire more than to dine on the agony of an Eldar soul. Yeah, and I guess that's pretty much everything Slaanesh just secretly or overtly wants is to just screw the Eldar.
Yeah, Slaanesh himself, he's very that's one of his main goals. Like when he was born, he was this like nascent godlike being, kind of like in throes, just like any like 2-year-old or infant. There was really no plan to his birth, right? He just rampaged across the galaxy, devouring Eldar souls. Now he's a little more mature and a little more cunning with his hunts, but even to this day, there's nothing he desires more than to devour the souls of the Eldar. And the Keepers of Secrets are kind of this direct representation of that desire.
So he will dine on anything, but he will dine, or his exquisite dining is reserved for the Eldar.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. So the Mask is a tortured soul who was once the Dark Prince's chief handmaiden, playing the part of both hairdresser and entertainer, literally. She was his hairdresser. Her dances would always ease any darkened mood he may have. She fell out of favor with Slaanesh after being goaded by Tzeentch into a humiliating defeat at the hands of Khorne and Nurgle. When she tried to cool her master's mood with a dance, he only saw mockery in her movements and cast her out, cursing her to dance for the rest of time. Now the Mask herself is a plague wherever she goes, entrapping both mortals and demons alike in her fatal dance of doom. So this is interesting. This is an alternate story of how the Mask came to being. We had a totally different story when we talked about the Harlequins, didn't we?
Yeah, it's basically just left out here because the Mask has always been a Harlequin. She was a performer that, when we talked about the Harlequins, the dancer that is portraying Slaanesh in the dance or in the performance is actually treading a really fine line between performing and becoming possessed, which is one of the reasons why this is both one of the most coveted roles, because you are doing such an important part of the performance, but also it is known to be the most dangerous performance or position to perform, simply because, well, look at what happened to the Mask. She didn't quite manage to stay on the line, so she got possessed and killed some of her troop I think the story was that instead of just swinging the blade just short of the neck. She just like chopped the head off. Whoops.
Mm-hmm. I wonder maybe if these are not in dichotomy with each other, Snorre. What if
I think
both stories actually are true?
I think that it in the demon description is just left out, and they have just elaborated on it a bit in the codex for the Harlequins.
Yeah, like that's how the mask came to being and did become eventually become the Slaanesh's, very close confidant. And yeah, I could see it. Both stories are probably true as far as the lore is concerned. Interesting. Yeah. Cool. It didn't occur to me that they could coexist, but they definitely can.
Yeah. The mask always was the mask, but her current position in the Demon Codex is because of what we just described. The whole being cast out by Slaanesh because he was pissed off.
Cool. So now we have some kind of... We're going to talk a little bit about Slaanesh demons on the tabletop. You want to start it off, Snorre?
Yeah, the Fiends of Slaanesh, along with Slaanesh-aligned Furies, Soul Grinders, and Demon Princes, all fulfill the role you'd expect in an army of demons. Although they can be physically weaker, Slaaneshi demons enjoy impressive initiative stats and an above-average number of attacks. For example, Demonettes have 2 base attacks at initiative 5, and that's compared to a single base attack and initiative 4.
Yeah, for like the what are they called? The Bloodletters. Bloodletters only have 1 attack, even though they're cornate. They have 1 attack at initiative 4. They are strength 4 with Furious Charge though, so they're not terrible. But it is interesting that the Demonettes have all these attacks. They're fast.
Yeah. As long as you can, that is what I also remember from having played against demons every now and then, is that as long as they can get into close combat, you're dead. If you can shoot them down, because that's where their weakness is, if they have to foot slog a long time, then they're in trouble. But if you can get them in really quickly, they are impossible to get off the table.
Yeah,
because
really
they will
cool.
just rip through anything. Demons of Slaanesh are also faster than their contemporaries, gaining the fleet special rule as well as an additional 3 inches to their run movement. Or if they're cavalry, they get 6 inches.
Yeah. Everything about the Slaaneshi demons is about speed and alacrity. So I think that's the rules really represent that, I think.
Yeah.
They've also included abilities that represent their the way they deal out pain, and they gain the rending special rule, representing their flesh torturing physical deformities. Now, rending is interesting because it makes all your attacks AP2, I think, right? On sixes, which is awesome, especially for the lowly demonette. I mean, if the demonette throws itself into close combat with something that has armor value of 2, a 2+, it might not do much, but with rending, that changes the game plan. Same thing against vehicles. Like if it slams against a vehicle, it can't really do much, but if it rends, hey, you're playing with gas there. The Slaaneshi icon of chaos is called the Rapturous Standard. These can be taken by the sergeants and the units. Once per game, this icon can reduce the weapon skill of models locked in combat with the unit by D3. So this represents them kind of filling their enemy with emotion and experience. The loci taken by the heralds follow the same philosophy, granting move through cover or +5 initiative. The loci taken by the heralds follow the same philosophy, granting move through cover for the lesser locus and +5 initiative for the greater locus. The exalted locus, which is hella expensive, forces opponents to accept challenges with specific models. So, like, if you have that on a herald with, I think they have like 5 attacks or 6 attacks or something at initiative 7 with rending, you could say you have to accept the challenge, and the person who accepts the challenge has to be this guy. That's awesome. That's really cool. And Demons of Slaanesh are very clearly very dangerous and designed to outmatch their opponents and bring them down screaming. I think they have really succeeded in doing that.
Yeah. And to round this off, Demons of Slaanesh have psychic powers because, well, they're demons. And they know the powers of telepathy and the Slaaneshi excess powers.
The Discipline of Excess has some really cool stuff in it. The powers are called Lash of Slaanesh. That's the Primaris, which is just like a weapon. It's to represent like this flail of pain. Acquiescence, which is this malediction that reduces the enemy's initiative and negates their ability to use counterattack and Overwatch, which would be really great against the Tau and Space Wolves. The Pavane of Slaanesh is a Witchfire power that does model by model murdering, and Cacophonic Choir, which is kind of like a replacement for Psychic Shriek, sort of. Really cool, really cool and flavorful psychic discipline. So do you want to move on and discuss the units that are represented in the Chaos Space Marines Codex?
Yes, I think that's the logical step, of course, because we've covered the god, we've covered his children, and now it's time to cover his worshippers.
Yes.
Although the followers of Slaanesh are quite capable in their own right, the insidious corruption of humanity is a huge task, which can only be executed with human accomplices. This need stems from the way Slaanesh and Chaos itself operates. It would be impossible to take advantage of the little opportunities that represent themselves throughout the Imperium without boots on the ground, so to speak. Every exhausted worker, every disillusioned commander, every desperate father, and the countless trillions who dare to dream of a better life are vulnerable to the lure of the Prince of Pleasure.
Even in the early days of Slaanesh in the Materium, he has been hard at work. The Primarch Fulgrim and his Emperor's Children Legion were corrupted by Slaanesh. The Dark Prince used a demon weapon called the Blade of Lair, and the Primarch's own hubris to twist him into a powerful ally, and much more. I don't want to go too much into that. If we can avoid too many spoilers, we'll try to do that.
If you really want to know the whole downfall, then read the book, read the Horus Heresy book, Fulgrim, and maybe even listen to After Olenor's episodes on the same book.
Mm-hmm. This was exacerbated by the meddling of artistically inclined remembrancers who had been tainted by Slaanesh in their adventures as they produced works of hedonistic sensation for their master. Like, the Emperor's Children remembrancers were not just, like, they didn't just write things down. They produced works of art to mark the deeds of those that they worked under.
And also, one of the things that Fulgrim made sure of is that being a guy who believed in perfection in every way, he also handpicked these remembrancers to be like the absolutely best remembrancers he could get his hands on. No one had better remembrancers than Fulgrim. So he really doomed himself in that way. He
did, because since they were the best, they had the desire to be the best, and when an artist is especially prone to the whims, to the wiles of Slaanesh, right? It was actually during a musical performance orchestrated by one of these remembrancers that the Legion actually truly completely fell to the service of Slaanesh.
Yeah,
there are lots of
and disgusting scene.
Oh yeah, there are lots of examples of how the remembrancers have really, really played a big part in the fall of the Emperor's Children.
Yeah. Today, though, the forces of the remaining Emperor's children, along with an unknown number of other fallen Astartes, still operate in the name of the Prince of Pleasure. Chaos Space Marines, marked by Slaanesh, stalk in the shadows of the galaxy with dark purpose and in search of darker pleasures. The enhanced physical and mental capabilities of a Space Marine are especially insatiable, capable of withstanding greater sensations, yet they find it harder to surpass these desires.
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse, or just a curse. Not sure what I call that. Of course, the lowly human cultists form the backbone of any organization under the gaze of Slaanesh. These cells of commoners start small, but over time they can swell to such great proportion as to pose a real threat to Imperial resources, including the Imperial Guard. Even lowly cultists can feel the kiss of she who thirsts. Her favor often takes the form of mutations, which bless the cultists with heightened senses, comparable to even that of an Astartes.
And leaders among the human forces of Slaanesh are not only self-indulgent monsters, but they inspire others to a crescendo of hedonism and self-indulgence. Not only have new leaders stepped up through the millennia, but those from days gone by still seek to exploit the galaxy for new experiences. One of Fulgrim's most devoted servants, Lucius, still serves to this day, and that is 10,000 years later. Though, the warp kind of makes that into a sort of irrelevant number. But Lucius was a whirlwind in combat and an unwavering follower of Slaanesh. When he finally met his match in a gladiatorial arena, Slaanesh just couldn't stand to lose him. The victor's pride over having defeated Lucius was so great that Slaanesh just couldn't let go of so much pleasure. Over the next few weeks, the champion who had defeated Lucius began to warp and change, as did his armor. In time, Lucius had taken the man's place, body and soul. Lucius the Eternal has become a true immortal, even in death defeating his foes. Whether this is a curse or a blessing is anyone's guess.
Yeah, it's interesting. It seems like the way the text reads, it's almost as if the pride in the defeat, or the pride at having defeated Lucius, is what allows the spirit of Lucius to assert itself in the warrior's body. And if only these warriors could somehow suppress that pride, they could possibly survive the event. But to this day, no one has, right?
Lucius dies every now and then, but he always comes back. And I'm not sure if really defeating him and not being proud about it would help, because even if you don't take pride in having defeated Lucius, if Lucius comes back and someone else can kill him, they most likely will feel that pride. So Slaanesh will most likely keep Lucius alive for eternity, just because there will always be someone who takes great pleasure in defeating him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're probably right. So, of course, the elephant in the room, and as far as units are concerned, are the Noise Marines, who are the signature unit, the signature followers in the Chaos Space Marine Codex. They're originally known as the Cacophony during the Horus Heresy, but today they've kind of mutated into this. This different species almost. They have this unparalleled sense of hearing, which allows them to just completely envelop themselves in the music. Of course, by music, I'm using that term very loosely. They revel in the loudest and most discordant of sounds. They wear this battle armor painted in loud colors and festooned with these very, very strange sonic weapons, which not only fill themselves with the pleasure of the carnage of combat, but also can rip their enemies asunder at the molecular level.
Yeah. Part of this whole transformation into the original Noise Marines was also something that, what's that guy called again? That crazy medic that the Chaos Space Marines have?
Fabius Bile.
Yeah, there we go. It's also, a lot of it is the work of Fabius Bile, having, he altered their vocal cords so that they could create sounds with their voices. That was one of the first things that started happening. And it's something that's mentioned in, I think it's in the book Fulgrim too, that some of these Space Marines suddenly start doing weird things. On one of the planets that they are conquering after they have been to this lair planet, there's a Space Marine that just shouts, I think it's a human, just shouts her into oblivion. He just opens his mouth and she just vaporizes. But of course, other units devoted to chaos serve Slaanesh, including Sorcerers, Chosen, Terminators, and Obliterators, to name a few. With the Mark of Slaanesh, a unit gains +1 initiative to represent their ability to sense their surroundings and react quickly. When a champion takes a Slaaneshi icon of excess, it gives the unit feel no pain, which is pretty reasonable because, they feel pain, but they don't feel it as pain, they feel it as pleasure. So they actually like it.
Yeah, they love the pain. And, I think some people are like, well, what? That doesn't make any sense. Why not Nurgle? And it's like, no, you don't understand. Read the words in the book.
Yeah.
Read the words that they've given you so you can understand why they give things the rules they do. And I think a lot of folks just miss that. It's something that people miss it all the time. They don't think about the actual story behind behind the rules they're looking at.
So it's very fluffy. So says we.
Absolutely. So says we. We also have another discipline for Slaanesh in the Chaos Space Marines Codex, which is interesting. I think when they redo these books, they're gonna kind of iron this stuff out and streamline it. But that's not to say that these powers aren't Slaaneshi. They have names like Sensory Overload, Hysterical Frenzy, Symphony of Pain, and Ecstatic Seizures. And they all do exactly kind of what you'd think they'd do. They distract the opponents, damage them, or even cause them to have reductions in their stats. So the difference between this discipline and the one from the Demons Codex is this one actually has a blessing in it. It's a random table for their altered state that they go in, but they get swollen sensorium, lunatic strength, or hyperactive fit, which just increase one of their stats by 1. So I thought that was really interesting that there's actually a blessing in there.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think that's it. I really think that a lot of these units are, I'd say all of these, the way they've represented these forces in both of the codexes is clever. I think they're, as far as rules are concerned, a lot of the stuff that makes the units more Slaaneshi are kind of pricey points wise, which is unfortunate. I would like to see it be a little more. I'd like to see it be a little easier to make the army more flavorful. Where I think in a lot of cases, if you go for the narrative route with these units, they tend to be somewhat lackluster as far as efficiencies are concerned. But
yeah.
Otherwise, I think they're great. I think they really do represent the kind of army that you'd want to build for yourself.
And hopefully there should be a Chaos Space Marine Codex around the corner. Well, probably not this month or next month, but hopefully within 2016. So
hopefully
there's always hope that there's going to be some tweaks to make all parts of Chaos Space Marines a little more enticing.
Yeah, dude, I've always been compelled to do kind of a very realistic looking Slaanesh army, and it's not the kind of army one would be able to bring to a Games Workshop store or even your most liberal minded of game stores, but I think it would be cool to do. Like
Yeah.
a purely androgynous army full of just horrible, very Kingdom Death styles, mods, and scratch builds. I think it would be a lot of fun, and it would be very disturbing. And my wife may ask me to go to seek professional help after building such an army. You don't even want to think. You don't even want to think about the Keeper of Secrets I have in mind.
Yep.
So, anyways, we have a campaign, a short campaign starter developed, and but I think we should definitely take a quick break before we go over that.
Oh, yeah. So
Cool.
we'll be right back.
In the Lincoln, UK area and looking for a game club? Head down to Gobsticks. We are a long-established game club that meets every Thursday from 6 to 10. Fancy staking your claim to the Xanatos system and discovering ancient Mechanicus tech in our 40k narrative campaign? Or taking your Blood Bowl team to glory in the Gob Stick-Up? We play 40k fantasy, Blood Bowl, War Machine, Hordes, Malifaux, a wide variety of role-playing games and more. For more information, including how to find us and to speak to our members, head over to Facebook and search for Gobsticks, GOBSTYKS, or head to gobsticks.co.uk.
This is Rob Sanders, and you're listening to the Masters of the Forge, where the world of 40k comes to life on your tabletop.
Welcome back. So now on the tabletop portion of today's episode is going to be another narrative campaign that you can use to kind of start off your own campaign. So it's like a kind of a campaign seed, or you could just run the three missions that we have and call it a day. It's up to you. So this is called The Pleasures of War, and it's designed for Eldar, Khorne Daemonkin, and Slaanesh Chaos Marines with demons. So it's 3 factions. We have a little bit of backstory here, and then we'll delve into the missions. So eons ago, 2 disparate Terran cultures, the Vatisse and the Tovans, set off for the stars in search of a better life. This would be during the Golden Age of technology. Interestingly, both cultures registered to settle the same world, Destra 3. Knowing this, the impulsive Vatisse chose to build their colony ship quickly, load it up with goods, and leave as soon as possible. The Tovans launched years after the Vatisse, but their ship was blessed with many technological advancements that had been developed since the Vatisse left. As such, the Tovans actually settled the world long before the Vatisse, even though they showed up after. The analytical Tovans carefully chose their landing site on one of Destra 3's 2 major continents. The continent they chose was closer to the world's northern pole. Though it had some arable land, it boasted of far greater mineral resources than the other continent. When the Vatisse arrived, they couldn't believe the Tovans hadn't chosen the warmer continent. They landed and began building an agrarian society. In the beginning, each continent was self-sustaining, but over time the Tovans began to need more food to support their growing population, and the Vatisse needed mineral resources to support the trappings of a modern civilization. It was in this way that the 2 cultures were forced to coexist.
And if people find this kind of familiar, then I'm pretty sure there's a Star Trek Next Generation episode that's kind of like this.
Yeah, a little bit, actually, yeah.
Yeah. Although I'm pretty sure it's not intentional.
It wasn't, but you never know what's lurking in my mind. I have seen each episode of Star Trek The Next Generation at least 80 trillion times, so...
So both civilizations couldn't have been more different. However, the Tovans were methodical and scientific in their endeavors. They were adamantly atheist and built a culture which valued and nurtured individual accomplishment. The spiritual Vatisse, on the other hand, wrought beautiful works of art for their gods and built a society based on morality centered on pure temperance. While these weren't all noble conceits, human nature has a way of surfacing even amongst the most idyllic societies. While Destra 3 did boast only 2 major continents, there were thousands of islands between them. As both nations grew larger, they began claiming the islands for their own. In time, although they maintained the trade required for both nations to survive, the Tovans and the Vatisse went to war over their claims to the islands. Meanwhile, the Tovans had begun building an infrastructure for space travel. While most of the other worlds in the Destra system were useless hunks of rock or gas giants, Destra 2 was a lush jungle world. Although the Tovan probes had detected some dangerous fauna, Destra 2 was not dangerous enough to be classified as a death world, which meant it was ripe for colonization. For this reason, the Tovans pulled back from their war with the Vatese and gave up their claim to all the islands in favor of claiming the entirety of Destra 2 for themselves.
Yep. So, well, we have an entire planet. We don't need islands. Forget it.
Yeah.
We don't need to be at war with you. Just keep them.
Yeah.
The Vatese couldn't be bothered with such things. They had never been interested in further space travel, and they were happy to begin settling the islands while the Tovans built their massive colony ship. While exploring the islands, the Vatese stumbled upon a curious and unnatural archway. The construct was made of white stone 50 feet across and adorned with smooth gemstones. The archway seemed to hum with power. One priest bravely volunteered to pass through the archway. She clasped her spiritual trinkets, stepped in, and disappeared. She was gone for hours, and the rest of the missionaries had all but given up by the time she returned, gasping for breath, bruised and dirty. She explained that she'd walked through a strange corridor and had emerged in a vast jungle where she'd been chased for hours by dangerous creatures, but she had been lucky enough to make it back to the portal and return home. The Vatese had found a webway portal connecting Destra 3 and Destra 2. By the time the Tovans had built their colony ship, the Vatese had already established their own colony on Destra 2. But I guess turnabout's fair play there, isn't it?
Yeah. For the time being, the world was large enough for both factions. They carved out a peaceable existence for the next 1,000 years, while both continents on Destra 3 became sprawling cities. While they weren't quite a high world, they had left little room for agriculture. This mattered little since Destra 2 boasted enough harvest to feed the other world in perpetuity. It seemed the Tovans and the Vatese had found a harmonic partnership, a rare success story between two disparate cultures in the galaxy. This was true until the Exodites arrived and reclaimed their maiden world. Ooh.
Yeah, bummer,
that's always
right?
fun.
Yeah.
The Exodites were brutal. They did not consider the Monkey infesting their world to be proper sentience, but a virus to be exterminated from its surface. Of the 12 million living and working on Destra 2, only a few thousand escaped through the webway portal and a single old system ship. The rest were slaughtered, every last man, woman, and child.
Not a surprise. Destra 3 was in crisis. They had little in the way of food to support themselves, and they hadn't had any communication with Terra for centuries. As the humans hatched a plan to retaliate against the Eldar, the birth scream of Slaanesh rang out through the sector, filling the night with a terrible light and a crescendo of madness. This odd happenstance didn't stop the plans of the Tovans and the Vatese, however. They launched a counterattack, sending thousands of troops into the webway portal together and dozens of system ships to support them. When they arrived, however, they found the Eldar had been decimated and the world crawling with warp spawn. Over the years, both groups carved bastions against the monsters and fought to reclaim the world. They were somewhat successful over the years, and the arrival of the Great Crusade eventually saw the complete retaking of Destra 2. Both of Destra's factions were forced by the new Imperial command structure to work together to colonize and exploit that world's resources. The Imperial truth quickly took over the polytheistic beliefs of the Vatese, while the Mechanicus left a lasting impression upon the Tovans. Destra 3 evolved into a world with dual roles, both as a forge world and a typical civilized world.
Today, Destra 3's northern continent is known as Forge City Tovan on its production stamps. The Vatese primarily maintain the production of foodstuffs on Destra 2, and move the goods through the portal to Destra 3's southern continent for processing and distribution, not only to the Forge City, but also to the rest of the Spinward Front at the edge of the Eye of Terror. Although this seems like a harmonic existence, the truth of the matter is that the Great Crusade was not completely thorough in their execution of the Slaaneshi presence on Destra 2. Forge City Tovan began having supply problems with the Vatese. The Vatesian shipments off-world still left on time, but those scheduled to fuel the Forge City's needs were either late or never arrived at all. Vatesian leaders became increasingly aloof. They shrugged off the problems at every encounter and eventually stopped meeting with the Tovans entirely. With no political strength and no real standing army to speak of, the Tovans petitioned the Adeptus Terra for assistance in dealing with Vatese. A long and arduous bureaucratic process ensued, and it would be too late for the Imperium to intervene before irreparable damage was done on Destra 3.
Bum, bum, bum. Yes, there's trouble in paradise, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep.
So, Mission 1, Mercenary Behavior. We have some exposition here before we get into the actual rules. After waiting months for the Adeptus Terra to review the evidence of wrongdoing at the hands of the Vatese, the Tovans' patience had worn thin. Shipments from the Vatese to Forge City Tovan had stopped altogether, while the off-system shipments continued without delay. The Forge's workers had begun the slow process of starving to death. Unable to wait any longer for the bureaucracy to save them, the Tovans reached out to some of their own trade partners for help. The Tovan head of state, lead architect Krus, was able to negotiate some trade goods for food shipments with a passing rogue trader. Venture Captain Jael advised him that most food shipments in the region are bound for the war effort along the Eye of Terror, and that they'd be hard-pressed to feed their entire forge before everyone starved to death. Their best effort would be, he suggested, to solve the problem at home. Captain Jael put Architect Kuss in contact with one of his own clandestine contacts, a band of mercenaries called Cadia's Warmongers, who were more than happy to work for trade goods and political favors.
On the 5th month of living without a constant food supply and making threats with no response from their neighbors, the Tovans unleashed the mercenaries upon the Vatese. Throughout the battle, it became increasingly clear that both sides of the conflict had grossly misjudged the true nature of the other. Cadia's warmongers weren't just a random band of mercenaries. They had become deeply influenced by Khorne. At the same time, the Vatesian people had become totally devoted to the Prince of Pleasure. When they weren't feasting and procreating, they were torturing the unbelievers with hard labor and long hours in order to meet their off-world shipment quotas. When the mercenaries attacked the Vatesian administrative offices, the entire area appeared as little more than a huge and bloody celebration of excess.
Haha, well, we're not surprised with that either, are we?
Not really.
It stands to reason that the Vatese have probably been affected by Slaanesh for a long time, and it's just recently coming to a head, really. So the armies for this one are you're going to do the mercenaries versus the Slaanesh contingent. So you're going to use probably Khorne Daemonkin, with the defenders being represented by Slaanesh-marked Chaos Space Marines and Demons of Slaanesh. The only thing is, for this one, both armies should contain at least 2 units of appropriately marked Chaos Cultists. For the battlefield, it should be arranged as kind of a sprawling urban landscape. Ruins aren't a bad choice, considering the months of debauchery which have transpired here. The deployment is hammer and anvil, and for the objectives, whenever a unit is destroyed, the controlling player places an objective on the location where the last model in that unit was removed, and objectives can be any distance from each other. Khorne objectives should be marked red, and Slaanesh objectives should be marked purple.
And some details about the game. The game length is variable, and you have the usual special rules, night fighting and reserves. And you just roll off to determine who goes first, and you can always seize initiative if you want to. The victory conditions are that at the end of the game, the player who has scored the most victory points is the winner. Otherwise, the game is a tie. The primary objective is that for each of your own army's objectives you hold at the end of the game, you score 1 victory point. For each of your enemy's objectives that you hold at the end of the game, you score 3 victory points. For the purposes of this mission, a unit may hold and or contest multiple objectives at one time.
Yeah, there's going to be so many objectives out there that it would be kind of crazy to not allow that.
Yeah. I've always been both against and for the whole conga line holding multiple objectives, because when you're desperate, you're desperate.
Yeah.
So, secondary objectives are Slay the Warlord, Bloodlust and Vengeance, and Linebreaker, and they are all 1 point each. For Bloodlust and Vengeance, a player scores the first time they kill a unit. The other player may also score this point if they kill a unit before the end of their following player turn. So that means
Basically,
so both teams can actually get the Bloodlust and Vengeance point.
That's right. It's basically first blood, but you're allowed to respond, which is pretty cool. And all the secondary objectives are the same for this campaign. So, we do have some special campaign rules for this one. Chaotic Revelations. On turn 1, only troops may be deployed. All other units must be placed in reserve. Do not roll for reserves. On turn 2, Fast Attack arrive. On turn 3, Elites and HQs arrive. On turn 4, Heavy Support and Lords of War arrive. Any independent characters may be deployed or placed in a reserves attached to a unit rather than arriving with a regular group. So if you have a Chaos Lord on a bike, you can put that Chaos Lord with a unit of bikes, and they come on together on turn 2. So it's basically they're kind of this game kind of represents both sides slowly finding out what is going on with the other faction. By the end of this game, they'll have collected enough evidence about what's going on to realize, oh, this is Khorne versus Slaanesh. This isn't doesn't have anything to do with the actual political machinations of the world at all.
This actually sounds kind of like Siege of Rax, where, well, you have this uprising and there's a whole trying to quash the rebellion, and it's actually just a Khorne Nurgle, I guess, orgy. So, with that, I think we should just move on to mission number 2, which is called Portal Gate. The war on the ground intensifies as the two forces realize they are fighting against their arch-enemy. The Slaaneshi forces fall back to the Webway portal, attempting to defend it from the bloodthirsty Khornate warriors who would love to take possession of such a valuable tactical position. The forces on the table are the mercenaries, who are represented with Khorne Daemonkin, while the defenders are represented by Slaanesh-marked Chaos Marines and Demons of Slaanesh. Both armies must contain at least 2 units of appropriately marked Chaos Cultists. The battlefield should be arranged in a sprawling urban landscape, again, with a webway portal wide enough for a light transport to drive through it, and it should be placed at the center of the Slaanesh deployment zone. The deployment is Vanguard Strike, and the objectives are as follows. And the players roll a die and take turns placing 3 Slaanesh objectives, painted purple if you can. The first objective must be exactly 12 inches from the portal. The second objective must be exactly 24 inches from the portal, and the third objective must be exactly 36 inches from the portal. For this mission, objectives may be placed within 6 inches of a board edge.
Because the last one will be, I think.
Yeah.
Pretty sure that's how that math works.
It's quite
out.
likely, at least.
Yeah. The details of this are that we do have a variable game length, night fighting, reserves, and seize the initiative in play. And we're going to roll off to determine who goes first. Victory conditions are victory points. The primary objective is you score 2 points for each Slaaneshi objective you hold at the end of the game. You score 5 victory points for holding the Webway portal at the end of the game. And you treat the portal as if it were just a very large objective marker for these purposes. Secondary objectives are Slay the Warlord, Bloodlust and Vengeance, and Linebreaker.
And the campaign rules for this mission is Fuel for the Fire. When units of cultists are killed, they generate an additional Blood Tithe point for Khorne Daemonkin. In addition, whenever a unit of cultists is destroyed, the controlling player places a Khorne objectives where the last model was removed. All units with a Demon of Slaanesh special rule or Mark of Slaanesh within 6 inches of a Khorne objective enjoy either a 6+ Feel No Pain or improve their Feel No Pain by +1. The effects are cumulative if a unit is within 6 inches of more than one marker, but not to greater than a 3+ feel no pain.
So what did you think? I was really racking my brain with a way to kind of bring in the power from pain kind of thing with the Slaanesh, and I figured, like, if a Khorne unit is like suffering and dying, that if they're nearby, that they would get a bonus.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that whether they're doing the torturing or, pain giving, I don't think they care as long as someone is suffering. Yeah,
and also the fact that the Khorne, like, they're kind of fueling each other, like by the Khorne units are get extra points for killing off these other cultists who have been used for these terrible rituals and stuff.
And there's a second campaign rule called Reserves from Destro 2. The Slaanesh player may bring on reserves from the webway portal instead of their board edge. Units arriving through the portal may assault when they arrive from reserves, but do so as if assaulting through terrain.
So the third mission is not quite unwelcome. Meanwhile, a patient band of Eldar had been awaiting their opportunity to strike at the humans and demons infesting the Maiden World. They hold out an unfortunate measure of hope that the world can be reclaimed for the Craft Worlds. For the armies for this, it'll be Eldar versus the Slaanesh marked Chaos Marines and Demons of Slaanesh. For this one, we want the Slaanesh demons to be the primary detachment so that we have a full effect Warp Storm table. For this battle, do the battlefield in like a twisted landscape of strange vegetation and rock formations if you have them. The deployment is Dawn of War, and there are no objectives.
The game length is variable, and you have the Reserves special rule in play. So, no night fighting, for once. Hooray! You roll off to determine who goes first, and you can also seize the initiative if you want to. The victory conditions are that at the end of the game, the player who has scored the most victory points is the winner, and if not, then it's a tie. The primary objective is that the players score 1 victory point for each destroyed enemy unit at the end of the game. Additionally, whenever a unit is destroyed in the assault phase, score an additional victory point. The secondary objective is Slay the Warlord, Bloodlust and Vengeance again, and Linebreaker, which are all 1 point each.
So yeah, this mission's a very simple one, but there are some extra special rules that kind of try to make the mission a little more unique that you can kind of use for your future games if you decide to elaborate or extrapolate from these missions. Passion of the Hunt. If the Slaanesh forces include a Keeper of Secrets, it may select this Warlord trait instead of rolling for one. The Keeper enjoys a 4+ feel no pain, and whenever it destroys an enemy unit, it regenerates D6 wounds. So it's hungry.
So, just to clarify one thing, you can never go above the base wounds, right? So you can't have like a zillion wounds.
No. Yeah, when you regenerate wounds, you can't ever get more than you already had.
Yeah, because there was this anti-Eldar thing at one point that could have like a zillion wounds, couldn't it? The Psychic Eater.
Oh wow! I that's before my time, bud. So the next ability is Slaanesh's Watching. Any Chaos Space Marine units with the mark of Slaanesh are treated as demons of Slaanesh for the purposes of the Warp Storm table. So they're not penalized by existing alongside the demons in this game. And I would suggest using that throughout your campaign. I think it makes sense for the Slaanesh marked units to not be affected by the Warp Storm table when the Slaaneshi number is rolled.
Okay.
So that's it for this short little campaign section. What do you think, Snorri?
I think this is a good start, and even though it's Khorne Daemonkin, Eldar, and Slaanesh Marines, you can easily have Crusade units, as in Imperial Guard or Loyalist Space Marines, coming in once the Adeptus Terra finds out that, hey, we need to do something about this because this could be a huge problem at some point. Congratulations, you have escalation possibilities.
Oh yeah, tons. And like Sisters of Battle for sure.
Oh yeah.
And like you say, Cadians, you might want to use this campaign as a way to try out some of those cool new Cadian formations that have come out. Yeah, give it a try, folks. Tell us what you think, as always. And we're gonna take a quick break here, and we'll come back and close out the show.
NGC 40K, where the story meets the table.
Join the hosts at Pete's Bar as they explore the craft behind the models, the story behind the scenarios, and the camaraderie behind the game.
Listen to the podcast and join in the discussion at ngc40k.com.
Well, that is enough, I think. Enough is enough is enough.
Yeah, I'm spent.
Snorre? Yep, I am. Well, you're clearly spent. It is almost 2 a.m. where you are.
Yeah.
So I'll just drop a quick line, remind everyone to please, if you are interested, come to East Greenbush for the Golden Sprue Cup 2016. It'll be the first ITC tournament of the 2016 season. We won't be there. We won't get it done in time for 2015, so we'll be the first one of 2016. Come on, get your points. It's a Highlander event, not pure Highlander, so you'll want to check out the site, the Flipside Gaming Facebook page for more info. We have an online sign up, and there's only like 7 spaces left, so be sure to get up there and get signed up. I think the Portal is also having an event in March. So that's the Portal in Manchester, Connecticut. Give that a look-see as well. They also have a Facebook page. Do you have anything to announce before we close out the show, Snorri?
Yeah, we're doing
any love you want to profess, or because Valentine's Day, or
I love my girlfriend, and I also love to read. So guess what? We're doing another book show.
Yes, we are. The next episode is going to be about the campaign I ran with our local buddies. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to have a little bit of an interview. We're going to have a story time, and Snorri and I are also going to go over the missions. But after that, we're going to do a book.
Yeah, we are doing The Beast Arises. So, guess what, people? You have 4 weeks to finish it, or else we're going to spoil the crap out of it.
Yeah. You should be reading it. I actually haven't done much reading of it yet, so I feel bad. I'm a bad person, but we'll certainly be fully informed by the time the show airs. So, everyone, as usual, please check out our various internet locales such as Facebook and Twitter and our
iTunes,
our blog at mastersoftheforge.com. And yes, please give us good iTunes reviews. We really appreciate that kind of thing. But I think that we've talked enough, and just please tune in for episode 46. But until then,
play the game the way you want to. The music used in this podcast was made by Parad of the duo Sublevel 3. The track is used with his permission. This podcast is protected by the Creative Commons Attribution, No Derivatives, Non-Commercial, International License. More information about this license and contact information if you have any requests can be found at our blog, mastersoftheforge.com.